Afternoon and welcome to Deersbrook Farm. Welcome to AHDB's first food service stroke butchery day on farm post-pandemic, and what an amazing day we're having. We've got around 90 professional chefs, butchers and food service people that are interacting with us all day on farm. We've had a phenomenal farm walk today, which has been a huge relief because yesterday did it hail. We've got a real great panel with us now to talk about British beef in the prelude and the run-up to Great British Beef Week, which is what this is all aimed at. And really, we want to try and interact with people at home, try and get some questions coming through. And we're just going to really try and talk about a bit of farming, of how beef's reared, but also what are the precursors and probably some of the barriers to utilising British beef on menus and through food service in general. So what I'll do is I will go now and introduce the panel, and first up will be Anna from Deersbrook Farm.
Hi, I'm Anna from Deersbrook Farm. Yes, welcome to our farm today. It's been a brilliant day so far. We're looking forward to discussing what's going to happen.
Fantastic. Can you just tell us just a little bit about the farm, Anna, just while you're...
Yes, so I grew up here at Deersbrook Farm, and I moved back 12 years ago with my husband and family, with a couple of children, to take on the ranks from my parents. We completely changed things actually, to bring a different breed in. So we've now got Sussex, a native breed, and we're pasture for life certified. And we've opened up a butchery a few years ago, so kind of things went from strength to strength. Started off farmers markets and food festivals, and now we supply butchers, chefs in restaurants, as well as serving the customers straight from the farm.
Fantastic. And then we'll come to Ben. Ben Bartlett, Master Chef of Great Britain. Over to you.
Hello there. Yes, I'm proud to be a Master Chef of Great Britain. Also a director for Love British Food. We champion British beef. You know, it's the best protein you can get in your diet. And that's why I'm here today, not only to talk about it, but to demonstrate it as a chef. So I'll be cooking up some of the probably less well-known cuts today, but we've got some great barbecues. I'll be adding my own marinades and adding some great flavours to this wonderful meat that is British beef.
Fantastic. Rebecca.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Wilson, and a bit of an imposter to the panel, considering I'm a farmer, but we farm sheep and arable up in Yorkshire. However, I'm a big beef eater, so potentially, hopefully qualified to be on the panel. I do a bit on Instagram to help the public learn about farming and food production, and also host a podcast which aims to bridge the gap with the public and people who haven't necessarily had a chance to step foot on a farm before.
Then we come all the way to the other end of the line to James.
Yeah, I'm James Herrick. We run a suckler beef farm up in Leicestershire, and I've also got a YouTube channel on Bolly's Farm.
Fantastic. So as you can see, we've got a really varied knowledge base on the panel today. And I think one of the first questions that I'd sort of pose out there really is what do you think the consumer base and the restaurant base think of the way you farm? Anna.
What do they think of the way that we farm?
What brings them back to you for repeat business?
I guess it ends up with flavour. It's just awesome from British beef. It's obviously fresh, hasn't been packed and come from miles. You've got the flavour for the grasses and the pastures Britain are famous for, with the lovely glorious sunshine and rain that you were talking about.
And haven't we just had some?
Yeah. Yeah, I think those reasons are quite high on the list.
James, what would you say is the key attributes to your business?
I think for us, we have a really consistent product, and I think as British beef in general, so looking at it from a consumer point of view, it's something that they respect, that they can acknowledge as being a high quality product as well. And I think that just keeps people coming back for it. They know what they're going to get when they buy British beef.
Ben, from a chef perspective, what would you say brings people back to British beef?
Yeah, as a chef and a consumer, it's the high welfare standards that we have with British beef. You know, we're not injecting hormones and other nasty chemicals into our lovely animals. You know, even antibiotics, it's controlled, it can only be administered by vets. But for me, yes, the freshness is important. It hasn't got to travel, you know, thousands of miles. That carbon footprint we're all very wary of now. So if we can buy from our local farmers, then that's really important for me.
Fantastic. And from a consumer perspective, from you, Rebecca, and how you see that all farming with the farming knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as consumers, they really trust British farmers. And I think it's for all the points which the panel have mentioned. We've got really ambitious environmental targets. We're really good on our animal welfare. And consumers and I guess everybody in the food service comes back to British produce because they know we're doing a good job of it. And actually, everything that kind of we do on social media is absolutely vital to keep that connection going with, as I said, people who don't get chance to come to the farm and see it in the flesh. We're able to actually show them through a video, taking them, for me it would be the lambing shed, not the carving shed, but taking them with us on our farming day is absolutely vital to get people on board with what we're producing.
Yeah, I mean, it's by no quirk really that farmers are seen as the most trusted part of any food chain now. We can see that through lots of different adverts that are being used with farmers on there. What would you say of people see when they look over your hedges? How do they perceive what you're doing in your business?
I think England's the green and pleasant land, isn't it? So I think people have started, since COVID especially, they've started to realise where their food comes from. They want to acknowledge that and take responsibility for what they're eating. So when they drive past the farm, they want to have a look, and they almost, it draws them in nowadays. Whereas I think a lot of the time they used to just drive past because they went to the shop, they bought the food, they ate, and that was all they were bothered by. Now, you know, especially with things like Clarkson's Farm and so on and so forth, there is that connection that they can get, and with, again, with social media and internet and everything, it's easier for them to find it and get involved with it.
Yeah. Ben, when you are driving about the countryside, you do many demonstrations throughout the country at food festivals, and you're looking over those hedges and you're looking for inspiration to talk about British beef when you're doing your demos. What actually drives you to actually keep that in that momentum?
Well, yes, you know, I think something like 2/3 of the country is grass, which is the perfect environment for cattle, you know, and that's the best tasting. That, you know, as a chef, it's about taste, texture and appearance, you know, with any dish you create. And you want that maximum flavour, you want that real juicy taste that you get from British beef.
Well, my mouth's drooling already, just waiting for some of that lovely brisket that's coming around for lunch.
I think the diversity is key in biodiversity, because if you're looking over the hedge, the first thing you see is the hedge, lots of species in that plant and wildlife as well. Then you look across the land, and there's, on our farm we would have cereal crops, but we'd have grass, we have cover crops which provide flowers and diversity and help the soil. So I think by being able to integrate livestock into our land, it gives biodiversity on a scale which some countries could strive to achieve, but actually aren't close to achieving in the way that we are. It's a patchwork looking across the British countryside, isn't it?
And it's what makes it sustainable. And also the carbon footprint, locking in that carbon, as we were saying before, kind of almost whether they're eaten, we're going to eat them, don't worry, but whether they're eaten or not, grazing ruminants is key to the environmental impact of the country.
So we've just talked about that environmental impact, the way that we can influence people that look over the hedge. How do we help these lovely people tell our story actually to that amazing benefit of what we've just spoken about now?
Well, sure, it's days like this, and you know, I'm not being here told to sell the AHDB, but days like this where chefs or people working in the food service can actually get onto a farm and see the animals in the flesh, see the pasture, see whatever it is that they're eating and how they're living. And it's something which maybe as farmers we've kind of kept how we produce food, maybe a bit behind closed doors, because we're really nervous about the public perception and perception of people who maybe aren't from a farming background. But actually, get rid of the smoke and mirrors and get people onto the farm to see what we're doing.
Mm.
Right. And Ben, from your perspective, how do you think we could help you do a better demo with more information to actually get more people buying the product?
Well, yeah, it's educating all of us about the product. And we always talk about, field to plate, but it's that whole chain all the way through. And getting involved in events, things like British Food Fortnight, which is a great event for restaurants, hotels, hospitals, the day centres, care homes. Everyone can get involved in events like that, where we're championing British beef over 2 weeks. Of course, we're doing it over the whole year, but over those 2 weeks, you can create some fantastic menus. And to get some ideas, you can go on the websites. Love British Food have a load of resources on there available for chefs and caterers to use. So, use the internet, see what's available.
That's really a valid point with the internet as well. We have the Simply Beef and Lamb website for Great British Beef Week. We've got all the facilities that are there. We've got all the collateral that's there that people can download and utilise. Menus, recipes galore. There for butchers to utilise, there for the industry to utilise through social media posts and everything that goes on surrounding Great British Beef Week. I mean, I know you're a lamb producer, Rebecca, so this is sort of a double-edged sword for you, but will you download that information and utilise it?
Yeah, and absolutely. And you see people who are selling meat direct, whether that's into food service. Obviously, chefs have plenty of recipes up their sleeve, but it's actually about people knowing how to cook the different cuts of meat, which I know you're going to be talking about later, because there's lots of misconceptions across the board about cost of meat. Well, meat is expensive if you don't know how to cook it and you make a bad job of it, or you throw it out, or you don't use the leftovers. And so that whole education, it's a whole education, isn't it, from start to finish, about buying what's affordable and then utilising it in the correct way is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
That's where the Simply Beef and Lamb is fantastic, because you can put a search into, say, the chuck. You could put chuck steak in and it'll come up with recipes for that. So you can go for the slightly peculiar or a slightly, something you haven't chosen before from a butcher's or a supermarket, and then you can go and you can source the recipe to suit that and to cook it really well.
And then we just touch on the cooking methods there, and there's so many cooking methods coming to light now. The invention of an air fryer. Wow. I'm fairly sure that's sort of bad language towards you, Ben, working on the flames, but what do you think of the new way of cooking and the new way of utilising meat all the way through the chain?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different ways of cooking food, and using new equipment, a great thing to do. The basic skills, you still need to do the basic chopping, boiling, heating, but there are different ways of doing it. Yeah, I specialise in barbecue. It's my passion. And you can cook anything on a barbecue. And beef works really well, in particular on a barbecue. But yeah, I still eat it all year, cook indoors, and use any equipment available.
Yeah. Are you a bit of a chef, James?
I like a bit of cooking. I think we were talking earlier about the fact that we're probably very lucky to have grown up in households as farmers who generally tend to have, proper home-cooked meals a lot, but a lot of people don't. But nowadays, with things like the air fryer, even though it might be a cuss word for a lot of people, it has enabled a lot of, it's become quite widespread. People have them in their houses, and it is a way of people being able to cook at home. So even if you don't come from a place that would maybe go and cook a roast joint or whatever, the fact that you've got an air fryer and you can make it really easy for yourself, whether it's the best way to cook it or whatever, the fact that you are able to cook it, it's just a brilliant tool to have, and it's making more people able to use the products that we produce.
Is there any questions from the audience coming in?
Just one.
Hang on, Matt.
The farm, can you still come under the red tractor? Are you still under that umbrella?
Yes, we are.
Because I'll discuss and debate online with people, and I was surprised to hear that farmers didn't see much benefit from the red tractor scheme. Well, in my career, I've been an intake manager at ABP Doncaster, and we take it very seriously. We take traceability very seriously, and to get our AAA quality awards to supply the supermarkets, as Cal knows, the red tractor is vigorous because when they come in, you have 4 hours to trace that cattle back to farm.
Yeah.
And I was a bit surprised that farmers, I don't think they were educated on how far it is traced back, which would be a benefit, I think, to farmers. I didn't think
that's it. I think sometimes it depends on where they're selling, where their end point is. Some people just breed and calf. Some people, take on that next and maybe sell it yearling, and some people carry it all the way through. So some people just finish. So it's getting that whole chain to work together. Here we're a single suckler, so we do the whole lifespan. So we very much know the importance of red tractor and take it very seriously. And then it benefits, so if we were to selling to ABP, we know that we'd tick your category, so we'd be able to, we've got a wider market base to sell through.
I suppose there is a fairly high cost to having it as well.
There
for
is
the
a
farmer.
Cost. There is a cost, and there's the audit. So there's a lot of paperwork. But once you've got your paperwork down, we've got 3 folders, and we keep them all updated. And when we have our audit, annual audit, which we had only a couple of weeks ago, actually, we get all the paperwork out. We get all the medical records out, pest control, there's manure plans. There's a lot to go into it to get those folders up. But once you've got them, maintaining them is okay.
That was my problem with the farmer that was questioning the validity of the red tractor. How much of a benefit it was in the industry. And I think red tractor is
farm assurance is a big question that's going around the industry, and farmers do question it from time to time when they're being pushed and push for more standards to be added in there. And it's not that they're anti-red tractor. Actually, what it is, it's questioning the value of the new standard that's coming into the equation, so as that actually they get a benefit out of it as well as what's there. So actually, we know that actually you over at your site really need that traceability issue in that whole farm, and that whole thought back to farm to the system. But then every business has its own desire to be within a voluntary system as well, and that's what we have to really respect as well, is that all farm assurance is a voluntary system, just as every food business that joins BRC is a voluntary system. So it's actually just which market do you want to play to and how do you want to put that forward. But the farmers that are in there are 100% committed to being in that scheme because they want to supply that whole food system right the way through to conclusion.
I think what's maybe important to note though, and I'm speaking, as I said, we have sheep on the farm. We are not in an assurance scheme with our sheep, but I would stand by our welfare, our record keeping, our traceability. So I think the most important thing to note is that there's different production systems, and as you say, depending on your market and your end goal, some things are more required than others. As I said, I would stand by every single element of our sheep enterprise. I can stand by our stock at the end and know that it looks fantastic and we can get market topping prices because the market we're going for doesn't absolutely necessitate farm assurance. So I think for consumers to realise that just because you're not in a scheme doesn't mean you don't look after your animals, and I think it's really important to get understanding across on all levels of assurance schemes, regulation, traceability, and the list goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've got a question that's come in on the AHDB Facebook page, and it's to the whole panel, but probably Anna and Ben. Building on James's question about air fryers, what would your recommendation be to get started on cooking beef, and what's the easier recipes or the easier cuts to cook it for an inexperienced home cook?
I'd say have confidence. Just go for it, and always unless you're to go slow. If you're going low, slow, obviously this doesn't apply. But like if you're cooking a steak or a roast, I'd say take it off quicker, cook less time, and then leave to rest. Resting is the key.
Yeah, most popular dishes, mince dishes are first, then steaks, then you've got your roasts, and then casseroles in that sort of area. And there's nothing better, especially, winter dishes, and creating, putting everything in a one pot.
Less washing up.
Yeah, that's great. You can put it on early on in the day, forget about it, put in some lovely fresh vegetables, with your chuck steak or whatever, and just forget it, and then come home and you've got a lovely, delicious meal at the end of the day, which won't cost a lot of money, but it will feed the whole family.
Yeah, I think as well, like, no one's expecting anyone to cook a beef Wellington first meal. Really? So I think just start, like you were saying, just start simple. Just make yourself some mince. Even if it's just mince and mashed potatoes, like if you don't, just start like that, and then do a cottage pie and build on it.
Fajita style wraps are a really good.
Exactly.
One, you just, you got your seasoning, whether it's from a packet or whether you're going to make your own with paprika and garlic. Just frying the mince and building your confidence. For sure.
Are you much of a cook, Rebecca?
Well, we were joking about it last night that I did food technology at GCSE, so I'm an expert if we go by that. But I do definitely do a lot of cooking at home, and I think for a lot of people, we do enjoy cooking. If I've been out for a long day at work, I still enjoy coming back to cook a meal and make something that's pretty much from scratch. One thing for me, and I don't know if this is I'm sure I'm allowed to say it, I actually watch loads of chefs on TikTok, and I spend probably too much time on TikTok, but I think there's a lot of people creating fantastic content online, whether it is from the recipe cards all the way through to somebody showing step by step. I don't know if it is is a bad thing to say in front of a chef who cooks in person, but there's definitely options where you can consume that information really quickly in your home. And these people are making fantastic, quick, easy, affordable meals. So watch a video.
So we'll go to a bit more of a push question, Ben, of what do you think is the barrier that more British beef is not used on menus?
Well, obviously there's so much variety in other proteins available, and chicken is the go-to first choice, and maybe it's a lower cost, so cost is probably one of the main factors. When you cook beef, you only get one chance, whereas something like pork is forgiving.
Yeah.
And you can rescue it. You can't with beef. If you overcook beef, that's it.
My mum always says you can't ruin it. The times that we're growing up, that the cows would get out.
So now we know it's all written down as though it's every week because you can't ruin it. That's the one.
But it still tasted good, even though it was cremated. It wasn't meant to be like that.
So from a farmer perspective, James, what do you think is the barrier that British beef is not used on more menus?
I think cost is obviously always going to be one. People are always, beef is expensive at the minute, especially. It's always going to be difficult for people to justify it as a cost of living crisis. People are going to go for cheaper meats. If they want to eat meat, they're going to go for cheaper meats. But as well, I think people maybe need to be a bit more adventurous with the type of meat they're eating, because a lot of people are going to go for particular cuts because it's what they're used to eating. And I think it would be nice to see a bit more variety out there for people to consume it.
Yeah.
And how do we overcome that then? How do we sort of make that so that everybody has what they need through the chain, but make it more accessible for, and I suppose what I'm asking is an impossible question really, because actually if we knew the answer we just wouldn't do it, would we? But, you know, but in your mind, what is that sort of answer to getting more on those menus?
I think it's one of those things that everyone's got to chip in. So like, we've got to promote it as farmers, but also the guys who are chefs and have got to start and push it a little bit. Don't go to extremes and put something on there that's like no one's ever going to touch it, but just try and do something a little bit different. The things with that you were saying with the recipe cards, or a cut that people might not use that's maybe relatively inexpensive. You know, if you can promote that and people start, oh, you know, that was good, I can go and try something else because I had this one thing that I never had before and I enjoyed it, so maybe I can have something else. And I think it's just chipping away at the edges to try and build that confidence.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm going into your local butchers as well and ask them, say, oh, I really love sirloin. Have you got anything else that I could try? So they know, you know, a general base of what you like. Or if you know more marbling, like ribeye, then they could. There's plenty of options that they could offer you that have better budget, which give just the same kind of flavour, and you can cook in the same style as you're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about your grazing and Omega systems, Anna? Because I think that's a really interesting thought process on this 100% grass system that you have.
Yeah, so that's one thing about British farming is that we do have that weather and the grass growth. So if we look after it and maintain it, then it can work for us. So we've got the native cattle, as I said, and we're 100% pasture for life. So their whole lives they only have pastures. So whether it's grazing in the fields when they're flourishing or in the winter, we make our own hay and silage, so when the grasses are dormant they can still be eating pastures. And we lay them, so we overseed, we spread seed of herbs, clovers, a whole mixture of pasture, so they can self-medicate as they're grazing. They get everything that they need, all the nutrition that they need. They're locking in carbon with every munch, so huge carbon sinks the meadows, obviously benefiting the wildlife and the environment as they're doing that. And then that also benefits their beef. So it's the full trio of benefiting the livestock, the environment and the consumer. So we send our beef off for nutritional analysis, and it proves that the elevated minerals and vitamins. It's also the good fats, the omega-3 and 6 balance, the healthy fats. It's good for the cholesterol, it's heart healthy fats, which is quite the opposite if you look on mainstream media. We really need these grazing animals, and they're such a key part of our diet for nutritional dense meat.
I think that mainstream media is a really good point, going back to the barriers of why people maybe don't eat as much beef. Cost is always going to be prohibitive when people are really, really conscious with, the cost of living and etc. But actually the mainstream media narrative that beef is going to basically give you every disease under the sun and cows are killing the planet, which actually is a narrative that is pushed from as soon as you can start reading about cows. That's why it's so important to break down all these myths and these misconceptions, because actually if you've got the evidence that nutritionally it's good for you, if we can actually do the research to say that cows aren't killing the planet, then actually we have something to push back on in the misinformation which is communicated to consumers, and ultimately consumers are going to trust something they see that BBC News writes about. Maybe I'm not allowed to mention one, there are other news stations available, but if BBC News pushes something, are consumers going to believe BBC News or a beef farmer who says, oh yeah, our beef's good for the environment? So we've got a real job to do to keep pushing back against this, but we also need the backing factually to keep pushing as well.
I think what Rebecca says about misinformation as well is a really important point, because there's a lot of people. It became kind of popular in the 60s. It was the Ansel Keys 7 country study that kind of told people that meat was really bad for your human health despite millennia of eating it. And he tried to correlate, chronic heart disease and cardiovascular disease with red meat consumption. And modern day science has actually debunked all of that and realised that we are still having chronic heart disease and more cardiovascular disease than ever, but red meat consumption has actually decreased. So it has completely debunked that theory. And But it's one of those that people have got it in head and it's ingrained within people in society, and it's just trying to get that information out there that actually it's not all what you think it is.
So we're just sort of coming to the end of the session now, really. So I'd just really like to say thank you to our panel, Rebecca, Anna, Ben, James. Thanks for your thoughts. I hope we've put some food for thought out into the ether, and people are really going to pick it up and start to utilise that. Please, if you want to get involved with Great British Beef Week, please go to the IHDB website, download all the assets that are there and utilise them through your social channels. Please go to the Simply Beef and Lamb website, utilise the many recipes that are on there that are really easy to cook, really few ingredients to the more complicated. It's really easy search engine to use. But thank you for tuning in, thank you for watching, and goodbye.